Bruce Barth and Geof Bradfield, who's on the recording, they both, after the gig said, "Come here." And I thought I was in trouble the way they said it. And I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, what did I do?" And Bruce put his arm around me and he's like, "Eric, why are we not doing an album tomorrow?"
Mm-hmm.
And I just was like, "Wow, okay." And he's like, "Why don't you put together a couple standards of that you like to play, and if you have another original, bring it in."
Hey everybody, it's Mike Jeffers, Chicago Jazz Magazine, ChicagoJazz.com, and welcome to another Around Town. And on this episode, we are previewing I guess it's a new release show. It is a new release show. I'm so used to saying CD release, but it's CD release. New release show, Eric Jacobson's quintet. They're going to be celebrating the release of Discover, his new release that came out this past October at the Green Mill, January 27th and 28th. And we have Eric right here. So Eric, congratulations on the recording. Great to have you on the show. And
Thank you.
Listening to this recording, I've got to go back and listen a little bit more, but I mean, it is cooking. It is musical. I know there's some deep meanings behind it. So let's just get right into it.
Yeah.
First of all, talk about the title, Discover, because I think that's kind of a good spot to start.
Sure. Well, thank you, Mike, for having me, first of all.
Sure.
I really appreciate it. And the title Discover, the tune Discover, I wrote this tune about a year after my dad had passed, about 15 years ago. And, I was just going through quite a bit of, if you haven't lost a parent, which I don't wish upon anybody, but when it happens, I can't explain it, but you kind of feel lost a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so I, sat down and just started writing this tune, and it just really reminded me of I have to discover myself new. It's a new beginning for me in a sense, to have not a father in my life anymore. So that tune was written with that in mind. So that's kind of how that tune started, with the original in mind. And unfortunately, in last year, my mom passed away. And I wrote a tune called The Unknown, which is kind of more towards the unknown after losing both parents now. And so that is on the record as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to hear about all that, but out of that came this incredible, great recording.
Yes.
And I think it's always interesting how artists can write music to relay their emotions. And when people understand the meaning behind the recording, then when they listen to the recording, they understand what they're listening to, and they really feel about what's happening. Now they can get really inside the music.
Yeah.
But you have a mixture of tunes on here. There's the originals, and then you also have some standards, I call them standards, but some American Songbook, Dizzy Gillespie, all those different tunes on there. And so how did you kind of combine the two? I know that there's like a kind of like a theme through the whole thing. And so how did you decide which standards, which originals, how did you put them all together on this recording?
Okay. So this is where the interesting story comes by. So, because I mentioned to you earlier that I don't think basically kind of my past. I've just never been that way. I'm not that type of person. And, not that, I don't appreciate it. It's just, I don't reminisce much. I always think forward motion. So when I knew I was going to do this interview, I started thinking about the album and how it kind of came about. And it really kind of threw me back for a second to realize, this was not supposed to be an album. Originally, my plan was I met Bruce back in 2018. I was in New York. We hit it off. I had a couple gigs in New York to play with him, and then
and just to clarify, Bruce Barth, who's playing piano on this.
Correct.
That's who Bruce is. Okay.
Yes.
Keep going.
And he was playing at Mesro, and we just he's the most down to earth guy. Absolutely, just felt like I had a friendship immediately, more than just music. And we just have throughout the past several years been able to play, and to me is one of the best piano players around right now, and a friend. So, but so I flew him out to Milwaukee to play several gigs. I did plan the recording session, and it was just going to be 3 originals of mine. That's it. I just wanted to record them. So I had set up the date. It was a Sunday. And we played with everybody on the recording 4 nights prior to the recording session. And Saturday night we were playing in Milwaukee, where I'm from here. And Bruce Barth and Geof Bradfield, who's on the recording, they both, after the gig said, "Come here." And I thought I was in trouble the way they said it. And I was like, "Oh, what did I do?" And Bruce put his arm around me and he's like, "Eric, why are we not doing an album tomorrow?"
Mm-hmm.
And I just was like, "Wow, okay." And he's like, "Why don't you put together a couple standards of that you like to play, and if you have another original, bring it in."
Yeah.
So, I emailed everybody like 3 a.m. Here are my list of tunes I'd like to do. And Bruce said that we're going to do an album now. So, and so that's basically, Con Alma is on the recording. I absolutely think it's one of those tunes that it just showcases Dizzy Gillespie's harmonic greatness with this tune. So that was one reason I picked that. I love playing I Hear a Rhapsody. So, and one of my favorite trumpet players is Blue Mitchell. So I picked a tune, Sir John of Blues, and that was it. And then I brought in a new, One Way, which is a original of mine. And so I actually had 7. And so another thing that was not planned was Old Folks, which is the last tune on the recording. And that was the last thing we did in the session. We just sat down and played.
Yeah.
So, but there's more to me on this whole moment of why this ended up being this way. The recording session, by the way, at Transient Sound, Vijay is an amazing engineer, and they had everything ready for us when we got there. But every take was one take, and that's it. So to me, I just, I thought, well, this is meant to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and sometimes that's when the best work happens,
Right.
I mean, it did help that you guys played together for 4 nights, which it's like, and to Bruce's point, you just played 4 nights together. You might as well go in and get as much out of it as you possibly can.
Right.
And really you kind of documented that time period, that whole weekend and everything. I mean, that but the one take thing, I think, I mean, a lot of people can go in and they can overdub, they can do a million takes. And I always feel like the more take, especially with this kind of music, the more takes you do, the less interaction is happening that hasn't already happening. The spontaneity starts to go away and all that. You feel it. And, just listening to the album through once, it sounds like I'm listening to you guys live, which is what I love about that. I mean, that's one of my biggest things is when some jazz albums are overproduced. I'd rather just see a lot. I'd rather have somebody sitting somewhere with a recording device, just recording, and I can hear it live because you can hear the energy and the action. So you really captured that on this recording.
Yeah. I felt the same way when I listened to it back, which I don't like to listen to right off the bat, but I was like, whoa, everybody just gelled. And, I mean, you just can't go wrong with that rhythm section.
No. So you've got George Fludas, Dennis Carroll, Bruce Barth, and then you've got Geof Bradfield and yourself. I mean, right there. And so with the quintets, is that something that you normally play in, or do you normally just play as a quartet and then you just had Geof on it, or is that like kind of like your regular group as a quintet?
Definitely. I mean, obviously at times when price range, all that good stuff. Right. But yeah, I mean, I love quintet style. That's definitely like the group that I would love to have and continue to have. So for sure.
So you're doing a release party on January 27th to 28th at the Green Mill. Of course, 4802, I know it anyways, 4802 North Broadway and Lawrence, all roads lead to Uptown, as Dave Gemolo always says. 8 o'clock till midnight, I'm assuming, both nights, Friday and Saturday nights.
Yep.
Same quintet, so you're bringing in Bruce from New York, so that's going to be really happening because you've got George, Dennis, and Bruce playing live at the Mill with you and Geof 2 nights in a row.
Yeah.
And, when you're going through this whole thing, and obviously you're going to play down tunes from the recording, but then how many more tunes can you put into this? Because the repertoire for 2 nights, and it's like 4 hours plus the breaks in there. You guys are going to really cover some material.
Yeah, for sure. I have a few more originals that I'm bringing in. And this is just the beauty of, I pretty much could call anything, to be honest with you. And they'll make whatever I call amazing. But yeah, I definitely have a list of some Cedar Walton tunes that I love to play, some Kenny Dorham tunes. So yeah, it's gonna be a lot of fun. And I gotta mention another thing that, like I said, I don't think about the past moments, but another moment that I realized this was meant to be was after the fact. I had it mixed and mastered in New York. Dave Darlington did an amazing job. And once it was done, I really, honestly, I still wasn't planning on even doing the album. So I shopped it around, and I got all great reviews from all the record labels, but Origin Records was definitely the one that I wanted to pick from, and they were amazing to say, let's do this. So I had signed the contract in the morning, and I flew to New York, and I was visiting, and I called up Bruce. I said, you playing somewhere? He's like, yeah, I'm playing at the Little Branch. Come on down, bring your horn. I go down there, and they just got done with a set, and Bruce came up to me, and we were talking, and he said, hey, by the way, who did you end up going through? And I said, Origin Records. He stopped me in the moment there. And if you haven't been at the Little Branch, you can barely see your hand in front of your face. It is so dark. It's amazing. And it's super little.
Yeah.
And he brought me back like a couple aisles back, and he brought me to this table of 4 guys, and it was John Bishop, who is the owner of Origin Records. Just so happens to be there that night that I flew in. So it was meant to be with Origin Records as well. So
oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. So, all right. So Eric Jacobson, trumpet.com. We want to send everybody over there. Now you're up in Milwaukee. So talk a little bit about that. You're in Milwaukee. I know you come down to Chicago for gigs, and are you teaching up there? Is that why you just stayed up in Milwaukee? Or
my wife is an art teacher, and she teaches here in Milwaukee, and I love Milwaukee. It's I'm so fortunate with some amazing great players here, and history of players like Brian Lynch is a good friend of mine. That's how I kind of got started with him being my mentor. Okay. He's from Milwaukee, and Gerald Cannon on bass from here, Rick Germanson, just some great Dan Nimmer, all these great players coming out of Milwaukee. So the history goes back. So I think it's just, swinging here than anywhere else is too. So I tend to stay here as my hub, but I travel quite a bit. So
let's talk a little bit more about this recording, Discover. It is Eric Jacobson, ericjacobson.com, ericjacobsontrumpet.com.
Yep.
So coming up this year, are you going to be touring with this group? Is there plans to get out on the road a little bit? Because it seems
for sure
kind of a incredible group to do stuff with.
And that's the hard part. Obviously, you record something, and then you're like, okay, how do we get everybody together? So I'm so fortunate that everybody's gonna be there for the Green Mill on the 27th and 28th. I have had a couple release parties here in Milwaukee where Bruce came in, George was on it, and Dennis. I'm doing something in Madison here in Wisconsin with the rhythm section as well. And then I'm heading to New York to play 5 nights with Bruce, and unfortunately no one else could make it. So, it's just, that's just how it goes. But yeah, and then I'm heading to the West Coast to play in Seattle and Portland. And so I'm kind of continuing the push on it now.
Yeah.
Super surprised and excited that it's the top 100 right now in the jazz charts. It's, I think, at 70 and moving. So yeah, it's
it's so interesting these days because of the pandemic, because of everything, it's almost like things are just starting to reopen up, and then trying to plan and plot. When you released your recording back in October,
yep,
you were ramping into the holiday. So it almost seems like 2023 is going to be the year to really push this thing out and get people hearing.
Yeah. Geof Bradfield mentioned, because we were talking about how exactly what you're talking about, the scheduling of things. And luckily I kind of got on the phone right off the bat and scheduled things for 2023 to continue that moment, and not, you don't always get to do that. So
No.
hopefully it gets to, get another second win on it, which
Oh
is
yeah. Well,
exciting.
second win. I always tell, musicians when they call me and they're asking about promotions and stuff like that, I'm like, well, how many back in the day, how many copies have you sold? I don't know, 10.
Yeah.
Well, last time I checked, there's 3 million people in Chicago, so I don't think we
Right.
need to record another one. Let's get it out there and push it.
Exactly.
And that's exactly what you're doing. And I don't think there's any other way to do it, regardless of the world we live in now with the internet, than to go and play places and make that interconnection there, personally connect with people. It changes the whole ball game.
I think so too. I didn't get a publicist, just the
right
pricey and all that good stuff. And again, it wasn't in my plans. But I mean, I've always felt the same way. It's like, if I can make a difference playing and bring, that's my publicist right there, and just being out there as much as possible. So I'm going to continue, just doing it and moving forward.
Well, that's awesome. I am happy for you. It's an incredible recording. Of course, it's called Discover. It's got, of course, Eric Jacobson, and then Geof Bradfield, Bruce Barth, Dennis Carroll, George Fludas. They're going to be at the Green Mill January 27th and 28th, 4802 North Broadway in Lawrence, right there, greenmilljazz.com. Eric, congratulations. Thanks for jumping on today on Around Town. I'm glad we can make this happen. And maybe I'm going to try to get out there maybe on that Friday night. I'm going to try to hit the first set or something, because it's going to sound incredible in there.
Yeah, I can't wait. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And of course, thanks to everybody for watching. I really appreciate it. All things are on chicagojazz.com. And until next time, hopefully I will see you all somewhere out on the scene.